There's a reason battlefield archaeologists still find perfectly concealed firing positions more than a century after the First World War. These nests weren't sloppy improvisations thrown together under pressure. They were deliberate, engineered illusions, structures built by men who understood that the difference between life and death often came down to whether the enemy noticed a shadow, a glint, or a shape that didn't belong. If you're watching this on Battlefield Survival, stay with me for the next minute. Because the story of how these hidden posts were created isn't just about history. It reveals techniques still studied in modern warfare, fieldcraft training, and even wilderness survival courses. These methods were developed through blood and necessity, and they remain some of the most disciplined concealment strategies ever used in open conflict. Once you see how these nests were built, you'll recognize the logic in every camouflaged military position from the 20th century onward. Snipers built hidden nests by blending structural materials with the natural terrain rather than fighting against it. World War I battlefields were mostly flat, cratered, and stripped bare by shellfire, but the best snipers understood that concealment didn't require beauty, only coherence with the surrounding environment. A good position wasn't just hidden, it looked exactly like something that had been sitting there long before the sniper arrived. They used shattered tree trunks, collapsed trench revetments, abandoned farmhouses, and even animal carcasses as cover. If a shell crater dominated no man's land, a sniper might crawl into its lip and reinforce it with sandbags coated in mud, rotting vegetation, or chalk dust to match local soil. This wasn't sloppy camouflage. Soldiers assigned to sniper units learned to study the smallest irregularities of terrain coloration and shape, so their additions didn't betray themselves at a distance. A practical modern application of this is the principle of passive blending, replicating the environment's own geometry instead of creating new shapes. For survivalists, this means building a shelter that uses fallen logs or natural depressions rather than constructing a visibly artificial lean-to. Shape discipline is a lesson straight out of the Great War. Observation posts were constructed as permanent fixtures that looked like ruined structures rather than man-made hideouts. Frontline snipers worked alongside observers whose job was often just as dangerous. To remain undetected, observers built posts that looked like harmless battlefield debris. If a building had taken artillery fire, engineers would construct a firing loophole inside what appeared to be a shattered wall. Observers could watch enemy lines through narrow slits backed with tightly packed darkness so no face, scope reflection or movement caught attention. Some armies used armored observation plates disguised with mud and broken brick. Others embedded these loopholes into haystacks, stone walls, or piles of rubble dragged from collapsed villages. This approach is still echoed in reconnaissance training. An observation point is strongest when it looks like something the environment itself produced. In practical survival terms, this teaches you to use existing broken or irregular natural features as sightlines rather than clearing a space or modifying it in an obvious way. Snipers hid nests deep within trench systems by extending underground tunnels into no man's land. British and German forces became especially adept at tunneling forward beneath the front line to create underground positions with concealed exit points. These nests had narrow shafts leading to ground-level firing ports covered with debris or disguised as natural soil disruptions. Because they were dug below the surface, muzzle flash and sound were reduced, making it extremely difficult for the enemy to locate the shooter. Some tunnels had 2 or 3 emergency exits in case a counter-sniper spotted movement. This method reflects a broader principle useful to survivalists. Whenever possible, build defensible positions below the natural line of sight. Even a shallow dugout or foxhole lowers your silhouette and creates more options for concealment than standing structures ever will. Camouflage relied on controlling light, texture, and human behavior rather than simply hiding behind objects. During the First World War, snipers learned quickly that even a perfectly built nest could be useless if the shooter betrayed himself. They avoided shining metal, cleaned lenses with soot or mud to reduce reflection, and placed cloth screens behind them so their heads were backed by darkness rather than open sky. They timed their movements to avoid moments of direct sunlight and, often worked in pairs, so one man could stay completely motionless while the other prepared gear or scanned the lines. This behavioral discipline remains foundational to fieldcraft. For those studying the practical side, a concealed position is only as effective as the discipline of the person inside it. Stillness, shadow awareness, and eliminating reflective surfaces are as relevant to wildlife observation or search and rescue concealment as they were to trench warfare. Some of the most effective nests were decoys that turned enemy snipers into targets themselves. A destroyed tree stump might be fitted with a false panel where a sniper could take a safe shot. Meanwhile, a separate stump, just a bit too perfect, was placed a short distance away as a lure. Enemy marksmen would fire at the decoy, revealing their own location. Both sides escalated this trickery, creating dummy helmets raised on sticks, fake bodies draped over parapets, and lifelike papier-mâché heads used to draw fire. There's a practical takeaway here. Effective concealment isn't just about hiding, it's about, controlling what the observer expects to see. Decoys are a legitimate survival strategy when you need to redirect attention away from your true position or camp. Snipers maintain nests through constant repair because concealment decays just like any structure. Rain washed mud off sandbags, wind shifted debris, and enemy shelling. Well, it rearranged landscapes daily. Snipers had to quietly reinforce walls, replace foliage, or patch loopholes without changing the overall look of the area. A nest that looked freshly built was a nest that drew fire. This reflects an important principle for anyone building long-term hidden shelters. Maintenance must be subtle, incremental, and consistent with natural changes around the site. In the end, the methods behind how World War I snipers built hidden nests and observation posts reveal an entire discipline of patience, illusion, and environmental intelligence. If you want more deep-dive breakdowns like this, go ahead and subscribe to Battlefield Survival. Share this video with a fellow history enthusiast, and help keep serious military history alive.